Hello and welcome to Administration Wise. In this video, we will move further in our administrative thinker series, and thinker for this video is Gullick and Urwick. So let us quickly introduce ourselves to them. It is with the coming of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, many attempts were made already to develop the principles of organization in order to meet the requirements of emerging industry. Among such attempts, mention should be made were the work of F.W. Taylor and Henry Fayol, which we had already covered in the previous video. They developed the theories of the organizational efficiency and in order to increase the productivity of the organization as their goal. Subsequently, American and British theorists synthesized the organizational and management theories as applicable to the public organization. Among such writers is these two personalities. These are Gullick and Urwick, who had jointly edited the Papers on the Science of Administration, Papers on the Science of Administration in the year 1937, and is considered to be the important landmark in the development of science of administration, as they synthesized and integrated the ideas, writings, and researches of earlier theorists on the organization, structure, and executive functions. Looking forward to their life and work, so it is Luther Hasley Gulick III, who lived from 1892 to 1993, was an acknowledged founder of administrative thought, a pioneer and a legend who born in Yamato, Japan, where he spent his initial 12 years before returning to USA, and he guaranteed the graduation degree from Oberlin in 1914, majoring in political science and a high honor, and obtained PhD in 1920 from Columbia University. He secured D.Litt degree in 1939 and was conferred the LL.D. in 1954. He also became the director of the Institute of Public Administration in the year 1921 and remained its director till 1961, and later the chairman of the board of trustees of the institute for the another 21 years. Gulick served as the National Defense Council during the First World War, administrator of the New York City from the year 1954 to the year 1956, and was Eton Professor of Municipal Science and Administration at the Columbia University. He undertook several consultancy assignments also on the administration in the US administration and in several other countries, including one at Calcutta, India also, concerning water supply under the aegis of World Bank. He was a member of President's Committee on the Administrative Management in 1936, and he authored more than 20 books and research studies. Over 160 articles were published by him, and over 250 unpublished papers, studies, and reports, etc. And Lyndall Furness Urwick, who lived from 1891 till the year 1983, was an advocate of scientific management, an outstanding management consultant, thinker, and prolific writer. Born in Malvern, UK, after graduation from New College, Oxford in 1913, he joined the family business, and during the First World War, he joined the army, rising to the rank of major. In 1922, he returned and later worked as director of the International Institute of Management from the year 1928 to 1933, and during 1934 to 61 he was associated with Urwick. Here only he met to his counter co-worker Lyndall. Urwick and Luther Gulick met with each other, or and partners limited in the capacities of the president, managing director, and the chairman. During the Second World War, 1940 to 1942, he also worked as advisor of the Treasury. He chaired the Urwick Committee appointed by the Ministry of Education to investigate that educational facilities are required to ensure adequate training facilities for its managers, and he was actively involved in spreading the management education, and he undertook several consultancies across the globe, including USA and India also. Luther Gulick and Lyndall Urwick had rich experience in working of the civil services, military and industrial organizations as well. In it, they find that continued references to discipline and efficiency in their writing, and they even borrowed concepts like line and staff from military organization. From their experiences only, they were influenced by the machine model of men developed by the Taylor, and studies in the industrial management conducted by Henry Fayol also influenced their thinking, and hereby deriving the inspiration mainly from their work. The two thinkers synthesized the classical theory of organization, which is also known as the administrative management. Classical thinking, also known as administrative management. And they believed that it is possible to develop the science of administration based on the principles, as they pointed out that the fact that even an engineer at one time was considered to be a craftsman who developed his skill at the bench only, and it was only through empirical observation, analysis, and systematized finding committed to the recording and the documentation over the considerable period a science of engineering became possible. In the same way, if the experiences of the administrators are processed, it could be possible to develop a science of administration. Administration hitherto remained an art according to them, and there is no reason why it cannot be developed into a science. They believe that the administration can be developed as science, and the science of administration. What about the structure of administration? They talked of a structure of administration. One notable feature in the writings of the Gulick and Urwick, it is important that they attach to the structure of administration. While almost neglecting the role of men in the organization, Urwick remarks that it is possible for humanity to advance its knowledge of organization unless the factors on structure is isolated from the consideration, however artificial such isolation may appear to. And also he traces a large proportion of friction and confusion in the society, with its major consequences to the faulty structural arrangements in organization. He also defined the organization as determining activities that are necessary for a purpose or a plan, and arranging them in groups which may be assigned to individuals. Thus, while the identification of tasks and their groupings is given top priority, the individuals to whom the functions are entrusted come later, and Arvik is aware of the fact that to begin with one may not have a clean slate, but he suggests that one may assume to have a clean slate and design an ideal structure of the organization, and any alteration, if required, may be made. He also suggests alteration to the design of organization. While conceiving an organization chiefly as the designing process, Urwick felt that lack of design is illogical, cruel, waste of time, and inefficient. Illogical because it is inconceivable to appoint a person and pay him wages without an idea of the position he is likely to occupy. Cruel when an organization and its organizational member does not know the qualification required for the job and the duties assigned to them in the job situation. Wasteful because if the job are not arranged properly, the functional specialization is not possible, and training people to occupy jobs following the vacant due to death or retirements or whatever becomes difficult and inefficient. In order to being the supervisors have nothing to fall back except on the personalities in the event of the conflict and confusion. In the event of conflict and confusion. Now, in the next slide, it is about the principles that have been stressed by Gulick and Urwick, that is completely devoted to their attention to the discovery of the principles in order to develop a science of administration. Gulick enumerated about 10 principles. Gulick has enumerated 10 principles and Urwick gave 8 principles based on the finding of in the working out to the principle. Gulick was influenced by Henry Fayol's 14 basic elements of the administration, and the principle that is given by Gulick is the division of work, या फिर इसको हम लोग स्पेशलाइजेशन भी कर सकते हैं। सेकेंड वन इज बेसिस ऑफ डिपार्टमेंटल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। थर्ड वन इज कोऑर्डिनेशन एंड हायरार्की। फोर्थ one is deliberate coordination. Coordination through committees. Decentralization. Unity of command. Line and staff. And delegation. And also span of control. Among these 10 principles of administration, Gullick lays special emphasis on the division of work. On the division of work, he feels that it is the basis of organization and indeed the reason for the organization and its functioning. The other classical administrative theorists also find that the division of labor as the central tenet. Work division implies that the job to be performed is broken into several components, and again each of the component function be broken down into simple repetitive activities. At each stage, the subdivision of the work is followed by the interrelating and divided parts, and the focus of the attention shifts from grouping the various activities into subunits and collecting the subunits together to form units and interrelating to the creation and overhead organization. Thus, Gulick says that division of work and integration are the bootstraps by which the mankind lifts itself in the process of civilization. However, Gulick has consciously said that limitation beyond which the division of work cannot go. He cites that the volume of work, technology, custom, and physical organic limitations do exist there. According to Urwick, 8 principles of the organization are outlined. These principles are principle of objective and organization. 8 principles of organic. First one is principle of objective. That is, organization should be an expression of the purpose. Second one is principle of correspondence. Principle of correspondence is the authority and responsibility must be co-equal. Third one is principle of responsibility. That is, responsibility of the superior for the work of the subordinate is absolute. Fourth principle of the Urwick is the scalar principle. Fifth one is the principle of span of control. Which is a superior cannot supervise directly the work of more than 5 or 6 subordinates whose work interlocks. Means according to him, the span of control is 5 or 6. Sixth one is principle of specialization. That is limiting one's work to a single function. Seventh one is principle of coordination. And the eighth one is the principle of definition, which is a clear perception of the every duty. Later, by integrating Fayol's 14 principles of Henry Fayol, principle of process and effect by Mooney and Riley, Taylor's principle of management, and also the ideas of Mary Parker Foley and Gracunas, Urwick pointed out total 29 principles. These are investigation, forecasting, planning, appropriateness, organization, coordination, order, command, control, coordination, authority, scalar process, assignment of function, leadership, delegation, functional definition, determinative, minative, applicative, interpretive, general interest, centralization, staffing, spirit, selection and placement, reward and sanction, initiative, equity, discipline, and stability. Arvik also felt that the administrative organization is still an unexplored field and there are many unknown factors for a fuller understanding, and he therefore suggests that his principles are framework of thought and an arrangement of ideas which would help others to synthesize out of their experiences. Now, the executive function. Gullick has identified the executive function and coined an acronym called POSDCORB by Gullick, incorporating the first letter of all the functions detailed earlier, and each letter in the acronym represents one important function of the manager. The first letter P here is for planning, similarly O for organization, S for staffing, D for departmentalization and directing, Co for coordination, R stands for reporting, and B is for budgeting. Now quickly let us explain them. Planning is to estimate the human and material resources available to the organization and discover the ways and means of reaching the goals of the organization through appropriate means while aiming to the economy and the efficiency. Organization is the process after planning and the activities of the administration. One should think of the structure of administration, that is the organization through which the activities are operationalized and objective is to be achieved. Staffing is concerned with all the aspects of the personal administration, recruitment, appointment, promotion, discipline, retirement, that are the functions which must receive due attention, and the efficiency of the organization largely depends on these factors also. Directing relates to the orders issued by the managers to the subordinates and directing the activities of the administration, so forth. Coordination that relates to the evidence of the conflict and duplication of the organization, but to secure the cooperation and network between them in the various unit of the employees. Reporting is the symbol of upward flow of the information to the executive, and budgeting covers the entire field of the financial administration. Now, the theory of departmentalization. The theory of departmentalization addresses the problem of the basis on which the work may be divided and the department should be created. Luther Gulick identifies four bases here. These are famously known as four P's. That is purpose, process, person, and place. Purpose, process, person, and place. And he discussed at length and demerits of the one of these bases of the departmentalization. The main position and proposition of the discussion is that the advantages of each of the bases prove to be less costly in terms of the others. In the first place, the work may be divided on the basis of major purpose of the organization. According to their functionalization, one has to identify the major functions and goals of the organization and to create the departments for each one of these functions. Gulick emphasizes on the self-containment of the organization and low coordination cost involved as the advantages of this basis. Secondly, the process or the skill specialization is suggested as an alternative to the process. If this basis is accepted, when all the work based on the similar process or skill should be grouped together, since it involves use of the same knowledge and skill and the processes as well. Gulick discussed at the length of the merit and demerit of the two bases. For instance, he lists out the advantages for the purpose and the basis. He says that it makes more certain the accomplishment of the given purpose of the project by bringing the whole job under the single director with the intermediate control of all the experts, agencies, and services which are required in the performance of the work with minimum outside interference. The theories of departmentalization are based on such common sense and terms that the basic truths underlying the division of work cannot be denied. Even today, whenever the work is to be divided and subunits are to be created, the merits and demerits of the organization as the basis have to be weighed and before taking any decision. But the Gulick did not consider other important factors which influence the work division. For instance, of the four bases of the type of specialization may be determined by the culture of the organization as it was situated, and by the environment and by the availability of the personnel and the political factors. Single executive. Gulick and Urwick did not favor the organization headed by plural bodies like committees, but instead insisted on the single top executive. For the single top executive, Urwick, for the instance, felt that the committees encourages irresponsibilities. They are based on to seal the mistakes and avoid responsibility. To him, the committees is like the corporation without a soul to be damned or a body to be kicked. To substantiate his point, he quotes that in his report of the US President's Committee on Administrative Management, of which the Gulick was a member, the committee says that for the purpose of the management, the boards and the commissions have turned out to be the failure, and it should be a single executive at the top of the hierarchy, and it should be overseen by a single personality only. The staff principle. The staff principle is born out of the principle of unity of leadership. Unity of leadership. When all the authority rests with the leader, he requires assistance in running the organization, and the staff renders such assistance both special as well as general and generic. Gullick and Urwick feel that the special staff units do not exercise any direct authority and that their job is to render the technical advice and provide timely and adequate information. The objective of these staff agencies is to discharge knowing, thinking, and the planning function, and they must get the things done by authority of ideas. The general staff is also necessary to assist the executive in the task of command, control, and the coordination purpose, and they must draw up the and transmit the orders, follow up operations, and help to coordinate the work of staff and specialists without themselves taking off on any specialized function as the member of the President's Committee on the Administrative Management. And Gulick applied his ideas to the civil organization and paved the way for the creation of the present staff agencies under the American president. Now, the next is the delegation. The delegation of authority is important principle mentioned by these classists, Gulick and Urwick. They stressed the need of the administrator to keep the requisite authority with them and delegate the rest of these to their subordinate. जितना जरूरी है उतना खुद के पास रख करके बाकी जो अथॉरिटी है वो अपने सबऑर्डिनेट्स को डेलीगेट कर देने की बात की जा रही है. Arvik says that the organizations do not function efficiently if the executive do not have the enterprise to develop and delegate, do not know how to delegate, and they also emphasize that the need to delegate responsibility of the executives in whom the authority is vested, that they should be absolute and that they should be personally accountable for the action of the subordinate. Hence, the delegation must be rendered as an important phenomenon of the administration. It involves the assigning the responsibility and authority to the subordinates to carry out the specific task, enabling the managers to focus on the higher level of the function and to increase the efficiency of the organization. Span of control. The principle of span of control postulate that an official cannot effectively control simultaneously more than a certain number of subordinates at a time. Arvik says that no supervisor can effectively supervise directly the work of more than 5 or at most 6. It is 5 और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 6 तक ही यहाँ पे सजेस्ट किया जा रहा है अरविक के द्वारा. Subordinates whose work interlocks, and he observes that if the number of subordinates increases the arithmetic progression, there is a simultaneous geometrical growth in the permutation and combination of the relationship requiring the supervisor's attention. Arvik, however, was not dogmatic about the number and says that the span of control is not a rigid rule to be applied woodenly in all the situations, but it is very useful general principle and diagnostic instrument in cases of the organizational weakness exist. However, Gulick, unlike Urwick, was less categorical in fixing the maximum number of the subordinate an executive can effectively manage, and instead he discussed some of the factors that determine the span of control. 3 factors, as was discussed by Gulick. These are knowledge, intellect, and personality of the supervisor. Knowledge, intellect, and personality of the supervisor may effectively be able to control more than number of the subordinates, and it is also matter of the time and energy of the executive. The second principle here is kind of work that the supervisor is supervising. First one is knowledge, intellect, and personality of the supervisor. Second one is the kind of work that is to be transacted by the subordinates. Where the work is routine, repetitive, and measurable and homogeneous, it will be possible to effectively supervise many of them. On the other hand, where the work is diversified, qualitative, and workers are scattered, the executive can supervise only a few. Third one here is the stabilization of the organization. Stabilization of organization, which are existence of the long time, the procedure and the method of the technique of administration in such organization could have been consolidated, and consequently there could be a less necessity of the intervention by the superiors. On the other hand, in a new and changing organization, the superior have to keep a constant watch for the good precedent and establish the proper procedure to be adopted. Next one is human factor and the time in the public administration. Gullick in his letter writing noted that much has happened to affect the field of public administration, and his analysis of the nature since he edited the paper of the Science of Administration 70 years ago. From this time, based on the 50 years of the analysis, he notes that after all, the governments are constituted on the human beings and are run by the human beings and have as their main job is to help control and serve to the human being. He considers that the human beings are the measure and the essential variables for the understanding the nature of a public administration today and the guiding the field for the future also. On this foundation, he identifies as to how the human beings constitute the dynamic factor and are intrinsic in the study of the administration. Gulick also emphasizes that the main function of the state should be human welfare. The main function of the state should be human welfare and the survival and the improvement of to meet the challenges of ever-changing environment and not the war. But unfortunately, the structure of the modern state is specifically designed for a war and is distinctly military type of organization. It is authoritative and with all the authority concentrated at the top of the organization. We talk about line and staff, field commanders, material and manpower, and we make the cost benefit analysis. We manipulate hard statistics, not the human values and the human welfare rather. Gulick emphasizes in the field of public administration that there is a need to have a new approach to the fundamental organization to the state so that to introduce the greater decentralization in the place of present centralized hierarchical military structure of the administration. And he also suggests that the public administration should forget the non-existence economic man and deal realistically with the non-existent free market includes the human welfare and the compassion in the embrace. Gulick also emphasizes that the time is crucial factor in every event and without it there is no change, no growth, no cause and effect and no responsibility for the management. He notes that all the public policy innovations are rooted in timing and the democracy timing is the hallmark of the statecraft. Gulick identifies that five different aspects of the time, namely the time as an input, as output, as the flow of event, as the gap in between the two or more significant events, and the processes and the time of the management policy. He also emphasizes that the time has practical and significant implication for the public administration, and it means that the principles of the management and the administration should be eternally tied to the culture in which they work, and the culture must evolve appropriately well before the major changes in the administration of the human organization can be successfully undertaken. And timing is essential for any organization as it is not the machine but an organization, and he emphasizes that time must become a central strategic and moral concern in the public management, and therefore the government must plan and work with the flow in the time for the time, in the time for the time. But the laments that the time has been neglected factor. Criticism. The principles of the organization of Gullick and Urwick were subjected to severe criticisms also, where while writing so much about the principles, they have not made it clear as to what they meant by them. Meaning clear नहीं किया गया यहाँ पे. Meaning of principle of organization were not made clear. And normally the principles are said to be the universal truth subject to the verification. However, such universal validity appears to be the absent as far as the principle of administration are concerned, and they appear more in the nature of the postulates of the experienced men and who have closely observed organizations at the work, and at the best they may be the action recommendation but not the scientific principles. L.D. White also says in the criticism that the terms line, staff, auxiliary agencies, hierarchy, authority, decentralization were useful terms for describing or classifying administrative situation. They are no more for the time being, and they are not rules, and they suggest that only working rules of the conduct which wide experience should be validated. Herbert Simon has said that high among the who the principles. Bertram Gross has noted that the Simon will long be read with the pleasure for the free swing attack on the Gullick and Urwick principles as the homely proverb, myth, slogans, and inaniates. Simon had said it as myth, proverb, and slogans and jargons. Simon said that it is the fatal defect of the current principle of administration that, like proverb, they occur in the pairs, and for almost every principle, one can find an equally plausible and acceptable organizational recommendation, and there is nothing in the theory to indicate which the proper one is to apply for. For instance, one of the proverbs says the administrative efficiency increases by specialization, but it is not made clear whether area of specialization is good functional specialization or good specialization. The principle of specialization does not help in choosing the in between the two alternatives. Henceforth, another contradictory situation relates to the principle of span of control. Also, the basis of departmentalization of the organization are criticized on the basis of incompatibility. The classical administrative theory is criticized for the neglect of the human elements. Also, span of control के लिए criticize किया गया है and departmentalization के लिए भी criticize किया गया है इसे. There is no doubt that the some of the evidences have been made to found the writing of the classical theorists that they were aware of the human element of the organization. For instance, Gulick says that social experiments must be made by men and on the men, and this greatly restricts the process of verification of the hypothesis, not only because of the value and dignity of the human life, but also because of the human being continually interfere with the experiments involving themselves only. He also pointed out that the dealing with the human being, we encounter a rare dynamic element which is compounded in the proportion of the predictable and unpredictable or rational or emotional conduct. As we are not able to accept the rarest circumstances to set up the controlled experiments and test of the theories overall and over at will. There is also the arguments that the Gulick and Urwick have shown concern only for the formal organization to the total neglect of the informal organization. Formal organization के लिए concern है, but informal को got neglected. It was a matter of common knowledge that the organization do not conform to the formal model of all the time, and the humans behave in the way that suits their instinct and the wants. Hence, the actual behavior always differs from the intended behavior, and neglect of the vital truths is very unrealistic as far as the administrative process are the concerned. The dynamic nature of the administration or the ever-changing setting in which the functions is not given adequate attention by the classical theorist, as the Alfred Dominant says in his finding that most of the conceptual constraints in the organization have the steady bias. It is also told for the biasness. The organization and organizational goals undergo a constant change as the result of the economic, social, and the political stimuli, and hence any study of the administration must take into the consideration this element of the change, and no doubt that the Gulick to some extent was aware of the role of change when he observed that the principles are appropriate at one stage and may not be appropriate at all during the succeeding stages, but the fact that it is a change as such not received adequate attention of the classical theorist. Simon and March has pointed out that the important limitation on the classical administrative science. The first relates to the improper motivational assumptions. According to Simon and March, the improper motivational assumptions. Second one is the little appreciation of the role of intra-organizational conflict of the interest in the definition of the limits and the organizational behavior. Third one is the constraints placed on the human being by this limitation as the complex information process system. And Fourth one is the little attention was given to the role of cognition in task identification and classification, and the phenomenon of the program evaluation receives a very little attention too. V. Subramaniam also points out that two important limitations of the classical theorists, that it is the first place there is lack of sophistication in the theories, and they appear to be the commonplace general knowledge proposition and which do not appeal to the intellectual curiosity of the academician and practitioners of the administration. And second one is all the classical theorists exhibit a pro-management bias in their theories, and the theorists only dealt with the problem of the management in the organization and not the other operational problem that involves the other level of the management. Gullick has also captured the development of the field of public administration and pointed to be the importance of public administration as the managerial and the political, moral and ethical concern. As the Den Hart has also noted that we now recognize that the administrative action is permitted by the moral choices, and whether we like it or not, the administrators are model of not only the technical and the professional but also of the moral behavior in nature. In last, let us quickly conclude the contribution of Gullick and Urwick in the field of public administration and conferring the administration as the science rather than being considered only as a art. The Luther Gulick, as acknowledged the founder of the administrative thought, the Lyndall Urwick, an outstanding management consultant with their rich experiences in the civil and the military administration, made the significant contribution to the synthesis of the classical administrative theory. Their paper on the science of administration, as edited by them, is considered as a landmark in the development of the science of administration and their view of the process of the development of the engineering of science. They also emphasized on the importance of a structure of the administration. They considered the structure as a design process and devoted their attention to the discovery of the principles based on which the structure may be designed. They considered the principles of the framework of the thought and arrangement of the ideas to help the development of the science of administration. Gulick had discussed the detail of the executive function in the acronym that he had coined as POSDCORB, and considered the division of work as the basis of the organization, popularly given the 4P principle, and also discussed about the single executive, the staff principle, delegation principle, and the staff of span of control. Gulick in his later writings focused on the human factor in the administration also, and emphasized time as the crucial factor of the organization, on the human factor and the time factor also. The principle of organization of the Gullick and Urwick were criticized for their contradiction and inadequacy to the answer practical organizational questions, and also for their neglect of the role of human elements. There cannot be any serious body to study of the science of administration without reference to the principle of organization, and understanding and theorizing the dynamic nature of the application of these principles in the different administrative situation is major challenge of the administrative studies even to the today's environment and the administrative system. Hence, we came to know all the points and information about Gulick and Urwick, their contribution in the field of administration and management. So that's all for this video. Thank you for your time. Keep signing.